Hey, my name is Deborah Winters. Welcome to my YouTube channel, a place where you will hear conversations with ordinary people telling their extraordinary stories. Hey guys, welcome to my YouTube channel, Their Stories. My guest today is Rebecca Klein. Rebecca is Executive Director of A Woman's Choice here in Lakeland, Florida. And for those of you that don't know about A Woman's Choice, haven't heard of A Woman's Choice, tell us a little bit about the organization. It's a nonprofit,
Absolutely.
right?
We are a nonprofit organization.
Okay.
We are a pregnancy help clinic. We exist to help women and men facing unplanned pregnancies.
Women and men, was that
women
good?
and men, very
Yes.
important.
Very.
Of course, it's the woman who's pregnant, and we provide medical services for her. That's why we are a clinic.
Okay.
But the information that we provide is for both of them who are in the pregnancy situation. And our goal is to make sure that we provide all of the information, support, as well as just compassion, love, hope, to empower someone to make a choice for life. What we do understand, our name is A Woman's Choice, and sometimes that confuses people.
And that was very smart because it puts you at the top on Google.
Absolutely. Alphabetical is
yes,
wonderful.
It's important.
But some people, both within the pro-life or pro-choice circles, get confused because it sounds pro-choice as opposed to pro-life. But ultimately, what we understand is it is her choice, and that it's just our desire that she makes an informed choice. And again, through the support and love and information that we provide for her and him, that they can make a decision understanding what's at stake with all of it.
These are your options, and these are the ramifications of options.
Yes. Yes, very good.
Now, how long has Women's Choice been around?
Yeah, this is our 35th anniversary this year, since 1987.
How long have you been here?
My 14th year. My 14th year. So
that's a long time.
It is. Thank God.
Which is good.
Thank God. Yes.
I am a supporter, and would you consider you have a donor base? Or what do you call people that support you?
Yeah, supporters. Either way, yeah.
So I've been
partners, friends,
partners
family.
Is a perfect word. Yes. So I have been involved for I don't know how many years, and we always had an annual fundraising event at what was known as the Lakeland Center.
Right.
We go way back.
Yes.
And now it's the RP Funding Center. And we had the last gala event last year. And we brought in our speaker.
Yes, Abby Johnson.
I wanted you.
Who's
that was the
amazing.
most
Absolutely
amazing story. Oh wow, she's just phenomenal.
Absolutely.
If you haven't seen the movie
Unplanned,
just her story.
Yes.
Oh, just amazing. She worked in an abortion clinic and made a 180
absolutely
turn.
And that God uses her to save lives.
Just powerful.
Yeah.
But we're not really here to talk about Woman's Choice, but I just kind of wanted to set the groundwork for who you are and what you do. So you're helping women and men. So talk a little bit about Rebecca, you know, a little bit of growing up, your childhood, and just take us forward. Is that good?
No, I'd be happy to. Actually, Deborah, if it's okay, I'm gonna go not too far back in the recent past to tell a story that then takes us back to what my childhood was. Because
should I have a Kleenex? I'm just wondering.
It depends.
Okay.
But because I have a neat story that took place in 2010, so now it's about 12 years ago.
12 years
that gave me an opportunity to share my story and my background, my upbringing in a very special way that might be able to impact other people's lives. And so have you heard of the Christian music artist Matthew West?
Yes, I love Matthew West.
Me too. Back in 2010, he did a neat project for the first time. Some people might know about it, where he wrote what he called his first story album. And I loved, it was the neatest thing. I loved hearing his heart, that he said that as an artist already, he had been producing albums. God spoke to him, and the message was, turn the microphone around. Because, artists are often writing from their own experience and their own thoughts and what God puts in them. But he wanted to capture other people's stories and glorify God in his music through other stories. So he shared this on radio and he shared this on the internet. And I remember I was driving in my car and hearing it on the Joy FM, and they said, hey, if you want to share your story of something God has done in your life with Matthew West for him to consider writing songs about, send it in.
Oh, this is interesting.
Yeah. So I'm driving along and I'm thinking, gosh, how do I summarize? Oh, because they restricted it to 200 words. And that's very significant because I am a woman of many words.
So am I. So now, were you submitting a written form? Okay.
Yes. And so I'm thinking, how do I summarize all that God's done in the decades of my life in 200 words? And God spoke to me very clearly and told me exactly what to write. And what I ended up sharing and writing a little email to Matthew West that like 10,000 other people did that year.
10,000 people sent in their story in 200 words or less.
Absolutely. It's his, you have to look him up online because he shares the whole experience. He actually went away to a cabin with his staff for like a month. He would come home and see his family and spent a month in that cabin reading stories.
Reading the stories.
And praying over them and writing. It was really an intense time for him. But God gave me a snapshot instead of, a timeline or narrative of this happened. God gave me a snapshot, just one picture in a moment of time that encapsulates and tells my whole story just in one picture.
Wow.
And I shared it with Matthew West. And in the end of that story, and I'll tell you what I wrote in a moment, was that he did choose my story.
He did?
Yeah.
Out of 10,000, he just picked one?
There were 10. So he filled an entire
stories
album.
Out of 10,000?
Yes.
So we could all go and listen to that?
Yeah.
He wrote a song?
Yes.
Sorry, I'm getting ahead. Getting ahead of the story.
It was exciting. It was such a precious gift to me.
Wow.
In so many ways.
I'm so excited to hear your story.
It was just such a gift because it allowed me to give a testimony of God's redemptive grace that again impacts other people's lives. And Matthew said he was looking for a story that had to do with coming from a dysfunctional background.
Okay.
And then the gift of new legacy in Christ. And so he said when he read mine, he knew that was it. So the name of the song is called Family Tree, written by Matthew West.
The song is titled Family Tree.
Family Tree.
Okay. Wow.
But here's what I wrote, Matthew, and this gives you just a beginning to understand where I came from. I wrote Matthew that when I was growing up, my life was one filled with violence, mental illness, drug addiction, alcohol, and homosexuality. That was my home
And that
life.
Was your home life.
My home life. Not me, but my home life. That was my parents. If this is the way I wrote it to Matthew, if it weren't for Christ, I was destined and bound for the same direction, like so many people are.
A product of your environment.
Exactly. You talk to people who come from alcoholic homes so often. There's alcoholism.
Or any kind of abuse.
Absolutely. And then it those cycles of repeat.
Right.
And so unless something intersected that season of development and growth for me, I would have ended up in mental illness. I would have ended up in just difficult circumstances growing up. But I came to know Jesus at 9 years old. I was introduced to Christ and accepted Jesus as my Savior. But as I shared in my little 200-word thing to Matthew, that didn't change my environment at all. Nothing changed in the environment around me.
Right.
But it changed in the sense that I never walked alone from that point on. And that through it all, not only did God carry me through it, but also changed my destiny that followed.
Oh, so good.
Yeah. And it all came to a point, it's all demonstrated in this moment of time when My father was a homosexual, and he was a homosexual who battled deeply with that. It was, generationally, spiritually, it was not, some people in today's culture, there's such embracing of it and a different demonstration of what that experience is. My father fought it. My father tried to overcome it.
Oh, wow.
And battled deeply with it. And it made him just someone who was very tumultuous and just pained, but it also produced a lot of violence.
Did you know this at the time?
I did.
When did you first realize that that was his lifestyle?
What my memory is, not sharp, but I knew by 7 years old. And I don't know why I knew. That's where the
Isn't that interesting?
I remember.
How many kids were in the home?
3. I have an older sister and a younger brother.
Okay.
But I remember at 7 being in a car with my mother and my grandfather, my father's father. They were fighting. So
your mother and your grandfather?
Her father-in-law.
Okay.
And they were fighting, and my grandfather shouted something about, Ken being gay. And my mother said, shh, the kids are in the car, don't say anything. And he said, they know their father's a homosexual. And all I remember thinking is, yeah, I know that.
You knew that?
I don't know why I knew, other than so much of my memory from that time is very fuzzy. But my mother told me a lot then, later growing up. So these are not things. I do know that I always had an uncle, always.
Oh,
yeah.
Were they different uncles?
Yeah, that usually for periods of time, not rotating every week or every night. He had relationships.
Yeah. Did they come into the home?
Well, these are some of the yes, but
am I getting ahead of your story?
No,
okay,
no.
sorry.
But my mom would share with me. This is one detail she shared with me once that I don't remember, but broke my heart when she shared it. She said he would have his partner, boyfriend in the house. We were not only all of that, but we were very poor. We didn't have much. And so they slept in the living room.
Who's they?
My mom and dad.
Okay.
That was their bedroom. And he would sleep with his boyfriend in the bed, and she would have to be on the floor. So, heartbreaking for her.
But you never saw that.
Well, I may have. I just don't remember it.
Later in life, when you were grown, she told you.
Yeah.
Wow.
But so that when I try to figure out, well, how would I have known, that may have been a clue. It was just, just part of the way life was. But when you're a child, any of the trauma or dysfunction that you face, you just normalize.
So I was going to ask, did you accept that behavior?
I had no choice. That's the thing with any dysfunction.
Did it seem to bother? Do you remember it bothering you, or was it just life?
I think it was just life. I don't think
this is how it is.
When I got older, because again, this started from childhood in my teens and later teens, when there's more and more awareness.
Yes.
Then there's issues as a teenager, of course, and of acceptance and who might recognize that, and people making fun of that.
I have so many questions.
Yeah, it was complicated, but I think the biggest issue that just stemmed from that. There's just the dysfunction of having that, type of dynamic in a home, not as God intended.
Right.
But it was the fact that he was a very angry, violent man. And so
he
was a great deal of abuse.
Wow. Oh, so physical abuse?
Yes. There was physical and verbal. My mother was primarily the one physically abused, although there were times that he would hurt us as well. Was
there any sexual abuse?
Not to my knowledge.
You don't remember that?
But we lived in fear. We lived in fear. You never knew how he was going to be. Never. And it could be the smallest things that would set him off and go into a rage. He destroyed things in the home frequently.
He did, like threw things?
Threw things, punched holes in walls. It just... Things were, it's just sad. What I know about my dad now is just, or the way I look at it now, is just sad. It was heartbreaking. He was a tortured soul.
I look at that, and I shared this in a prayer group yesterday. When you encounter individuals that and they have these violent responses, or just the way they are in response to people in general. If there's an issue, I think, now what caused that? What was the root of that? Where did things go wrong? Do you have any indication with your father, a trauma, an event that occurred?
That I don't know. Actually, I'd like to learn more. My dad's passed. We could just, both of my parents.
Oh, they're both gone. Okay.
The sad end to it, and that'll go back to the story with that I sent to Matthew, is he died of AIDS in
Your
2003.
father died of AIDS. And did he die an angry man?
Yeah.
Wow.
Sadly.
And he lived in that lifestyle until the day he died.
Yes.
Did you have a relationship?
Yes.
So do we need to go back? And
I
feel like
so much.
Okay, so let's go back.
Well, I'll just finish that story out, and that'll give you a picture of where he was at the time when he was going to die. It's a sad, tragic story, all of it that leads up to it. But the story I wrote Matthew is when he was dying. He was it was within the year before he died. My mother and he were already divorced by that time, yet they had a very codependent relationship.
They did.
So she still was in contact with him. Like, they couldn't stand each other, and all they could do was fight, but they couldn't stay away from each other. And so I was actually up there with my mom visiting him.
Where's up there?
Oh, I'm so sorry. At the time, we were living in New York, and he lived upstate New York, so we had to drive up there.
Okay.
I apologize.
No worries.
So we were up visiting just because he was ill, and we would periodically go. He was living with his boyfriend, John, at the time. He had been with John for about 8 years by the time he died.
A long-term relationship.
Yeah, most of them were. But John and I were standing in the kitchen, and my mom and dad were in an adjacent room and having very intense, heated conversation, which is what always happened. And they were fighting, but it was... This is what they were fighting about. They were fighting over a comparison of who had tried to commit suicide more often.
Between the two of them?
My mother was mentally ill. We haven't talked about her yet.
Okay.
How many psych medications that they took.
They were arguing
each other. Yeah. And so I'm standing in the kitchen with John, and he looks at me. Now, this is my father's gay boyfriend. But, he just... That's what it was, So we're standing there, and John looks at me and he says, "Wow, Rebecca, that's some legacy you have," because we're both overhearing what's being said. And my response was, "Yeah, I guess so. What else am I going to say? This is my life. This is all I know." But Deborah, that's the beauty.
How old were you?
My early 30s. Because
okay.
He's going to die.
Did you have a family?
Yes, by that time I did.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that was not your life. Your life was a loving husband.
Well, and that's what God showed me in that moment. And that's why I sent this to Matthew West, because when I said, "Yeah, I guess so," I was very resigned. I was very depressed. God spoke to me in a powerful way that I had never experienced before in my Christian walk. And it's almost like he punched it out of me lovingly. Yeah. And he said, "No, it is not your life." That's what he said. He said, "That is not your legacy. Yes. You are my child, and you have my legacy." Aww. And that just changed. I knew that truth, but to hear it from God in that moment, and in that context, just to be reminded that God changed everything. So all of that, the violence, the anger, the drug, use, the suicide attempts, that's what I was headed for. But God said, "No, that's not yours." And it was a life-changing moment for me. So in case a person listening would say, "What do you mean you heard God spoke to you?" What was that like? And that is something people ask you
about. You mean you heard a voice?
It's one I've heard other people describe it, and I've experienced it other times.
I have experienced it, but
it's like it's not audible, but it's almost audible. Yeah. You hear it in your heart inside of you. And I think even people who may not know Christ in the way that I do, I think we all have that. And we know it's the Holy Spirit.
Yes, we do.
But there's that inner voice where you're hearing actual words, and know. And And that's it. They were just words, not loud. John didn't hear it, but God spoke it to me. And so it's something you hear inside of you, and it's a precious gift. It's a precious gift.
Yes.
You know?
I know for me, oftentimes it can be a thought or a phrase that I know that wasn't me.
Yeah, right.
You know,
because I wouldn't be able to think that.
I wouldn't have thought that, or I wouldn't have said that.
That's right.
Isn't that?
Yeah.
That's just it's powerful.
It is powerful. It is powerful.
Okay.
So that's what I had sent to Matthew, and that's why he caught on to it, because it did just give that whole picture. My whole life, you know, came up to that moment.
Encapsulated,
yes. Yeah. But also the gift that God gave me through coming to know him.
That wasn't the rest of your story.
No, and it's neat. One of the things, this is just a fun little detail, when that's all Matthew knew of my story when he wrote the song. And so the song is
Family Tree.
Family Tree, yeah.
I can't wait to listen to that.
So it's not going to be like, oh, about Rebecca, blah, 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 or, you know, or homosexual dad, because he writes them in such a way that so many people, Deborah, come from dysfunctional homes.
They do.
And there's just no limit to what dysfunction looks like. And yet it impacts hearts, no matter what. So he writes it in such a way that
it could be anybody
could listen to it and go, yes, that could be my hope too, right? But one of the things he wrote into the song, because he writes about dysfunction and family legacy, and then there's one part, and he says, you're gonna find true love or real love, you're gonna hold your kids, and you're going to change generations, something like that. And he didn't know at the time the details of my life, to know that I was married and I did have 2 children, and that God had already begun to give me that gift of a new life in our family tree, that our family tree didn't have to continue.
The healing had already begun.
Yeah, and of course it's an ongoing process, pretty much for a
all
lifetime.
Of us,
but yes, God had already begun to restore that to me. And so, it was just neat.
So what did it, aside from that story with Matthew, how did that work? How did they communicate to you, and what did that look like?
Fun. Yeah, it was a fun journey.
That's a fun thing we want to hear about, right?
Then
we'll get back to the serious stuff. We need a little break here.
I thank God for it. It was just a joyful season. So a lot of it had to do with the Joy FM, and you know, because they were connected to Matthew and concerts that he would do that would follow
Carmen.
So my first phone call came from her.
It did.
Well, at first I got a contact from Matthew's people. I got an email saying, your story is one of the finalists in what we are considering, and I had to sign my life away. That's what my husband always says. Because I had to surrender the rights to my, not that I can't tell my own story, but the song does not belong to me. The song belongs to Matthew West. You know, so
there is no monetary.
No. I was just sharing it. He was using it. So paperwork came, and we're like, oh, so we were aware, like, gosh, he's actually considering my song, but I didn't hear anything else actually for quite a while. But then one day I get a call from Carmen on the Joy FM, and she's the one who said to me, Matthew has chosen your story, and he has written this song for you, and we'd like you, this is fun, we'd like you to come down to the studio, and we can't bring Matthew in, but we're going to arrange for you to record so he can come on the phone and share your song. He's going to sing it to you. And I hadn't heard any of it yet. So I was just so excited, and my husband and I went down to the studios, and it was just an incredible day, you know, and I'm there with Bill, Carmen, and Dave, and so they're having me tell my story, and when I shared with Matthew and recording all of that, but then it was like, oh, it's 1:00, Matthew's going to call. He's in Nashville, he's going to call, so they have this little device in the middle of the table, the phone rings, it's Matthew.
It's like a conference call.
Yes, exactly. Okay. So I'm sitting there, you know, with the big stuff in the radio studio, and he was just so gracious. He's thanking me, you know, he's thanking me for sharing my story and allowing him to use it, And he says, I want to sing the song for you, you know, and I'm so overwhelmed. And he says, I'm nervous because I want you to love it. You know, he's singing a song about my life to me, and he's like, I want you to love it. He's like, just give me a minute. I have to get my guitar, and you hear him rustling with papers and things like that. And then he walks through the door. So,
no, are you serious? That is so fun.
The whole time he was just in the next room.
They lie. No,
they do that all the time. So,
that is amazing. So you were like shocked.
I'm sitting here and he's right there with a guitar.
And you're going to sing me the song.
And then he sat like as close as you are and sang.
Oh my gosh.
Me and bawling,
were you tears? Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it was just so beautiful. And then I spent the whole day there because they did a lot of recording of the story, because there were, again,
of your story?
Wow. All the people whose stories he used in that first album, he ended up doing a second album after that.
Are all these people from Florida?
No.
The 10 stories?
No.
But they brought all these people in? Or
No. It was just actually me and one other girl who were Florida. Everybody else was other places. But the Matthews people were there recording everything, so they had footage for it. And then every time back then, this is way back then, every time when he first came to Florida after the release of that album, locally, I would be at all the concerts. And so he would bring me up on stage.
Are you serious? Yeah. Where was I? I was here.
Yeah. I'd had dinner with him. And then the best part was when...
You got to meet your family?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. But then about a year and a half later, he did do a second story album. I don't think he's still doing them, but he's done 2.
Okay.
I think that one's called Into the Light.
Okay.
And so what he did is he invited me and my husband, but me and my daughter went up to Nashville. And they brought all of they call us the storytellers. So all the storytellers from the first album and all the storytellers from the second album put us up in a hotel and did a big event for us.
Really?
And sang all of our songs. And so we spent the whole weekend with his family, with his mom and his dad and his wife and his kids. And, and we went to the Grand Ole Opry.
There had to be a lot of tears because everyone is hearing.
Gosh. Yeah, absolutely. Because every story starts with brokenness.
Gosh, yes.
But then comes to redemption.
Yes.
So there's tears and joy.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah. So that was
wow. Nice. I had that is a beautiful thing.
Yeah, it was a gift. It really was.
We could just stop now, but we want to hear the rest of the story. But that's wow, how exciting!
It was.
So that was 2010, and then a year and a half later, you went to Nashville,
right? And then it's just since then I go to the Matthew West concerts.
Yeah, of course, it's a connection.
He did something for a woman's choice, and during 2020, I had hoped all those years that he could come do a concert here for us, but just music artists like. He has all these contracts so that if he's in Orlando or Tampa, he can't be in Lakeland, blah, blah, blah. So he never came. But in 2020, when we had our first and only virtual gala, like the whole world,
I remember.
Matthew West did a live thing for it.
He did?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Why don't I remember that? I have a good mind, a good memory.
Yeah.
Wow. So that is so amazing.
Yeah, it was really cool. So that's just it's a lighthearted, fun way just to share a hard thing, but the ultimate message in it is that the hope that comes in it, that no matter what you come from.
That's why we're doing this.
Absolutely.
Hope for you guys.
Yeah, absolutely.
Someone's just searching, and there is hope, right?
Yeah, there is. There, like we said before, there's so much brokenness.
Yes.
I've heard stories that are far worse than mine, and I've heard stories where mine is maybe worse than that, but in the end, brokenness is brokenness.
Yeah, broken, yes,
and,
so many hurting people.
Yeah.
And hurting people hurt people.
That's right. Yeah.
All right, well, tell us your story.
From there, so that's the beginning, and that also goes a lifetime, because I was in my 30s when I lost my dad to AIDS, and the sad part of his story. There's a sad part and a redemptive part too.
Oh, we want to hear about redemption.
Well, it's a redemptive hope. That's all it is. There's no certainty, but redemptive hope.
Okay.
Because you asked, like, did he live in that lifestyle, my whole life? And the answer is yes, but there was a season when we came to know Christ,
How did that, you mentioned it, you were 9. How did that, were you in church?
Actually, yes. We got.
So you guys were going to church.
Well, we weren't initially. We had moved across. We lived in New York. I was born and raised in New York. We moved across the country because my dad wanted to pursue acting. He was very dramatic.
Wow.
And we went to California. He hated California. It just was not his thing. But while we were out there just 2 years, and my brother was in preschool, and one of the moms my mom met there invited us to kids club on Wednesday nights. And so I love to tell pastors this story because we got saved through, children's programs.
Children's ministry.
Because I didn't know anything about Jesus. So I was only 7.
7 years old.
I was only 7, but my parents were, apart from all that other stuff, were also very like hippies. They were searching, they did the Buddhist thing. They were Jehovah's Witnesses for a little while. I was baptized Episcopalian because that was my grandmother's religion.
Is this prior to being 7?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's just
early. Okay.
Yeah, so there was no.
They were experiment. They were
totally
on a mission. They were looking for hope.
They were.
Oh my gosh.
Absolutely. And so I didn't. When I was very young, I didn't have an understanding of Jesus was somebody the Jews killed. That's as much as I had ever heard. Christmas was about Santa Claus. Mm-hmm. Easter was about the Easter Bunny. There was no context for us. But then we start going to kids club, and kids clubs.
Then you heard all the stories.
And in an evangelical church, and they're telling me about Jesus, and who wants to ask Jesus in their heart. And of course, I raised my hand.
Yes.
Now that was the first step. I usually say I got saved at 9 because it was after the move back to New York, where I had somebody sit down with me one-on-one, and I was still only 9. But share the gospel with me and ask me if I wanted to give my life to Christ. And I felt like that was the real moment of understanding, even though I was just a child, different from when I was 7, But my mom got saved. My brother and sister got saved.
When you were 9. Mm-hmm. So you had left California and came back to New York.
We did. And we found a church.
Okay.
Yeah, because since we had been in church in California, we were like, okay, but this is all new to us, but how do we find a church?
Yeah, we want a church.
We moved back to New York. We found a church, got grounded in a church, and spent my whole life growing up in the church.
In that church.
Yeah, and then everything going on at home. But my dad, in that time, did come to know Christ. And we could have all sorts of deep theological discussions about these things, and we don't need to.
So he did prayed the sinner's prayer.
He did.
He accepted Jesus.
He went to church for years at different times, but he never was able to overcome the battle.
Yeah, wow.
And after he...
And we can understand that. I mean...
Absolutely. We all wrestle with sin.
Yeah, we all do.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. What was sad was after he died, we found a lot of his writings. He wrote a lot.
He did.
He wrote poetry. He wrote journal entries. And it broke my heart because he was aware of the forgiveness of Christ, but he did not feel worthy of it because of the battle in him. And so I can't speak to his salvation. I just can't.
Right.
What I know is in my early adult years, that's when my parents divorced. My mother finally, because she was very abused by him. They had been separated for many years. And but I mean, just the truth of the matter is it was my sister's bridal shower at the church. My dad came angry that day and beat my mother up in front of the church until the cops were called.
In front of the church? You mean in front of the church people, or
in front of the church building on the street? And he was arrested, and that was a breaking point for her. And she said,
"I'm done.
That's it." And she divorced him, got an order of protection against him. And it's all so complex, Deborah, in a psychological way, because my dad, in response to that, went into a very deep depression. And if I, do my own armchair psychology, I just think he wanted so much to be better than he was, and it was the final failure for him.
Yeah.
And it just sunk him deeply into depression. That's when he contracted AIDS. And my mom told me, my father never told me this, that he did it on purpose. It was suicidal.
He was just ready to be done with it.
Yeah. I don't deserve better.
Wow.
And so he did it knowingly. What an awful way to commit suicide over 13 years, of deteriorating health.
Yes.
But he also, at that point, then immersed himself fully into the homosexual lifestyle. Prior to that time,
he just turned away from God.
Exactly. Before that time, he was still had partners and living, but he was always fighting. After this point, he was done. He was done with everything. He immersed in a drug culture. So here he has AIDS. He's a smoker. He's taking recreational drugs because he's really trying to hurt himself in the end. And fully in the homosexual lifestyle. So those last 10 years of his life, he was not following God. He, in fact, mocked us. There grew a tension. So you asked if I had a relationship with him. In some ways, I was very close to my dad, just because, I don't know, he's my dad. We were a lot alike in good ways. I feel like a lot of the good things God's given me came through my dad.
Good. So good.
But during those years, I was growing in faith, and he was pulling
the separation became wider.
And it's sad. It was just a spiritual disconnect. We couldn't, because he just was in a bad place. But finally, when he was past the day when my mom and I were there with John, but like when he was actively dying, I was there to see him just a few days before he died. And then the day he died, it was a Saturday, I was at a baby shower for someone who was in that same church back in New York. And so they all knew him. And it was a Holy Spirit moment, because we were at the shower and all of a sudden the Spirit of God moved in me and then began moving in other people. We need to pray, and we need to pray now. We need to pray for Ken. That was, my dad's name. And it wasn't prayer for healing, that was too far gone. And not that anything's past that, but we weren't looking for that, you know. But we were praying for his soul. We were just interceding, and we gathered in a circle and just prayed passionately for my father. And then literally within minutes, I got the call that he was gone after that. And this is what it speaks to me. And I am not a theologian. I am not a pastor, but this is what speaks to my heart. God pursued my father to the moment of his last breath. Wow. That's why I have hope.
That he moved on you and others to pray for him.
Now, it was just urgency.
And your dad was still conscious, even though he was going down. He still was able to communicate and talk.
No, and I don't. That's again theological discussion.
Okay.
I believe spirit to spirit. That we don't have to.
Right.
That God was just working in his spirit too. So I carry hope. That's all. I don't profess anything that I can't, defend, but I carry hope.
Yes.
That someday I will get to heaven.
Yeah.
And my dad will be there.
That's all we have is hope.
That's all we have.
So towards the end of his life, were you able to have a conversation with him?
No.
Okay.
He was too resistant. He was angry with God, angry with himself.
Can you speak for your brother and your sister? Do you guys have a relationship?
We do, thank God. Yeah, it's just the three of us since we've lost both of our parents, and they're just we're all at different levels, and we're very different people. I was you come out of an environment like that, and I was the overachiever and the good girl.
Okay.
My sister was the rebel.
Okay.
So there was.
Is she still a rebel?
Yeah. Okay. Absolutely.
Because I'm sure she's going to watch your story.
I love you, Jen. But she knows that. There's just no denying that she was the rebel and I was the good girl. So we all dealt with it differently, and our relationships with the Lord are different, and my sister, I think, and healing since that time. So that was in my early 30s when my dad passed. I'm in my early 50s now, and I've just been on a consistent, slow, but faithful journey of healing with the Lord, and healing brings such awareness to things. And my sister is functional, and she's blessed, and she's a wonderful
love her
person,
dearly.
and I love her. But I don't know that she's received all the healing that any of us need, and so she sees things with my dad a little differently than I do. So we don't talk about it a whole lot, My brother, he's kind of just in the middle of it, you know.
And
He does. I just don't know
goes.
that he thinks about it as much. So it's interesting. When you all come out of the same environment, that you can be so different.
Yes.
And how you deal with it, how you respond to it, and what God does with it later.
And
so
I would never have known any of this.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
just your disposition,
Sure,
your countenance.
Yeah. Well, that's the beauty of it, because that's the Lord. If I hadn't been brought out by Christ alone, you would have seen it.
Yeah.
Because it's all I would have had.
Yes.
But God took that away and exchanged it for the gift of His grace.
And the good news is you embrace that, and you worked hand in hand with your Father, with the Lord, with Jesus to become better and be healed and be whole. Yeah.
And it's a process, Deborah.
It is.
Especially
It's a
when
journey.
people are listening. I always, I love to speak and share my story, or just teach the word to women particularly, but to anybody. And I always want to be careful never to appear as if I have it all together.
Because we don't.
We don't. And it's so, the enemy is such a liar. And I myself.
Yes, he's the father of lies, is what the scripture tells us.
Absolutely. And so I know myself, I've sat under somebody's teaching and be like, oh, she has it all together. And, I'm such a mess. And so I don't want to be that person to somebody else. I want to, acknowledge Jesus
be
has
transparent.
done
Be
all,
transparent.
Right.
Yes.
And you can I can confidently say that God has restored in me. God has healed in me. I am not the person I used to be. I'm not the person I could be, but I'm also a work in progress.
A work in progress.
And all of that can be true while at the same time still working through it. That's sanctification.
Yes.
That's God's grace. I call it the tension. There's something, I have a lot of ideas for writing in my mind, and one of them is about writing about the tension. And I just think that's our lives here on earth, because until we get to glory, that's the only time perfection is coming.
Yes, right.
So right now I'm just in the being and becoming all at the same time.
And it's the fire, the refiner's fire, right?
Yes.
I mean, we consistently have opportunities to overcome. Challenges come day after day. And the more we overcome, the stronger we are.
Absolutely.
And we can handle the next one and the next one and the next one. And we just keep putting one foot in front of the other.
That's right.
And we'll always in this earth suit, we'll always have challenges. We'll always have opportunities to fail or overcome. And if you fail, you recognize it and you say, I messed up. Let me try again.
But we learn.
We learn, yes. I told the Lord one day, I said, I am really tired of school. So can I have like a break? Can I take the summer off? Because this whole school thing is overwhelming and exhausting.
It is.
But He's so faithful to be there with us through the schooling, through the lesson, through the challenge.
And I've had to, when I look back and share about what I've come from, and God has completely restored me from that, yet at the same time I'm still working through some of the impact, and things that I've needed other people to help me see, and
things that you don't see in yourself. Right.
When you grow up in a home that has, and so many people can relate to this again in so many different forms, but there was just no security, no sense of security.
I can't imagine.
No sense of safety, no sense of love, and
just the unknown. You never know
fear.
What the
so much fear. And also my parents, my father was verbally abusive. I don't recall them ever saying you're no good or you're this. I don't recall that, but the message
there was
comes
no
through
affirmation
when you can never do anything. Because of their issues, they were rigid. My father was a perfectionist, and just one example, like you couldn't. Nobody can fold clothes well enough to make that man happy, or clean the house, or cook. So as children, we had to do things right, otherwise we paid for it. And so those kind of things build messages into you that don't belong.
Yes.
And so it just
the
takes time.
Overachiever.
Yeah.
That you
just trying to get it all right.
Trying
to get it, make some sense out of it, because
the corners all match.
Yep.
Yes.
Oh yeah, because there was so much chaos. Just had to get what we could right.
Wow.
And I've learned in my adult life just some of the impact that has on how I perceive things and perceive myself today. And so God is still doing that work of healing me so that I can walk in the fullness of who's He's created me to be, the abundant life. I am walking the abundant life, but there's more abundant life. There's more fullness that God has for me, but it's got to heal some of those scars. There are scars, there are wounds, and God uses our lifetime and all these circumstances, like you said, the challenges that He allows to come, to help us to identify those things so that He can heal them.
Do you find that you recognize those areas quicker?
Now I
do. And deal with it quicker?
Now I do. 10 years ago? No. 10 years before that, honestly,
so it's a journey.
One of the things I was going to say when we talked about sharing my story is that the older you get, the more of a story you have, because there's just more life.
There is, and more challenges.
So I can look back, decade by decade, and see growth, from my 20s was really just the emerging of my adulthood. And it was the first time I realized that I might have some residual impact from life,
Okay.
But I didn't quite know what to do with it. And then in my 30s, by then I'm married and having children. And so then new things start to come out, but then God is working on that. And then 40s, and I can see, though, all that God's done each step of the way. And right now I'm in a place where, yes, I know God has shown me so much more so that I can catch things. And when the thing about the enemy, the liar, is that these things that are just part of what's ingrained in us from being raised that way, he uses against us. He knows exactly what's gonna
push.
Absolutely. But I've caught on a lot more. And so it doesn't mean he's not trying still.
Right.
And I might react and go, oh, well, no, wait a minute. So
I got your number.
That's right.
And and people, God allows people to come across our path to reveal those things that need to be fixed, or the cleaning process, the refining process.
Absolutely. Relationships. Honestly, I think every marriage is a question of sanctification if you want to open yourself to what God's doing. So marriage alone. But even, close, intimate relationships, working relationships. God, if the whole world, everybody was just like me, wouldn't that be nice? But not
It'd
really.
Be so boring.
It really would. But so God brings people, like you said, into your life that expose things in you.
We
have to be willing
Has
to see
nothing to do with them. It just brings out.
Right.
Yeah.
But then if we let God show us, we can see
and
what's in me.
I was doing some reading here recently. I love to read. And the fact that He does bring people into your path on purpose to work that out in you.
I believe that. Absolutely.
And then you recognize it. There has been a situation where there was a close relationship I had, a female relationship. And I was irritated over and over. And it's like, I need to be fixed from that because this person, to my knowledge, hasn't changed, but something's going on in here.
That's right.
So change my heart, change my thinking.
But that's a maturity that can only come in
Not
Christ.
that I'm mature. I have not arrived, just FYI.
No, I know, but honestly, that's not what our flesh responds, right?
Oh, right.
When we're in those situations, the first response typically is flesh, and the flesh is like, you're wrong, look what you're doing. So it's only through the Holy Spirit and our willingness to hear that from the Lord that we can then turn inward and go,
Yes.
oh, wait, she's just being her. We can't change people.
Mm-hmm.
She's just being who God made her to be.
So wait,
I can only change me.
And I'm irritated. Why is that?
Yeah.
Oh, this is so good.
Yeah, it is good stuff.
You're welcome. This counseling session has been free. Or you could call a woman's choice.
If you're pregnant.
I was thinking donor. I was thinking support.
Yes, please call now.
Please call. And your number is
863-683-2341.
Shameless promotion there. This is so good. Okay. Yeah. So have we kind of covered your story? Is there something else you would like to add?
Well, again, Deborah, 8 decades of life give you more and more story.
And we'll probably go ahead.
Yeah, and it's all about time, but because that's my origin story that defines who I am today, but shows what God's done, and I love it, and I'm thankful. But then life is a journey, and
it's ups and downs. We ebb and flow, right?
Yeah, and just so such amazing things that. What the short, I'll tell the short of it, that, coming out of all of that, going into college, independence, and I wandered from the Lord, for a while, and God, though, graciously, lovingly brought me back.
He's so good about doing that.
The way without the details of the story, sometimes He's willing to let you hurt. To get you there. And I'm so thankful. I couldn't see that in the moment. All I saw was the hurt. But God brought me back. And then from that time when I was able to really, in my 20s, recommit my life to the Lord, just the amazing journey He's brought me on, bringing my husband into my life, children.
I mean, think about that. All that you lived through as a child. He had to have this man for you to walk through this with you. Absolutely. Because there was probably a lot of baggage, a lot of
and you don't even know it until you are married, and then you're reacting to things. And,
oh gosh!
Yeah, so Joseph is a special guy.
What is his name?
Joseph.
Joseph. Oh, okay.
Joe. But then
Joseph and Rebecca.
Yes.
Oh my gosh! Okay, go ahead.
So, and then
there's a Bible story about Joseph being one of the sons, and then his mother was Rebecca.
Yeah, that's Jacob.
I mean Jacob.
Jacob.
But Jacob. But
they're all in the same family line.
So are you trying to confuse me?
No, I'm getting confused.
Yes.
Sorry.
Yes. So yes.
But then we have an amazing story of how God brought us to the ministry. Both of us now serve full-time in ministry for the past 16, 17 years, and it was just a transformational story of how God changed our lives from what they were to what they are now. And for me, that's bringing me into the pregnancy center ministry. And the short of it again is just the idea that I didn't even share some things, and I don't want to. Let me just say this real quickly. Going all the way back to the beginning when my parents found out that they were pregnant with me. So they got pregnant with my sister. It was a crisis pregnancy like we deal with here.
Yes.
But 1967, they got married because that's what you do. And so they were 19 years old, got married, had my sister. 2 months later, they got pregnant with me. So
2 months?
Jennifer's just 2 months old and mom's pregnant now. And they're still kids and they're still dysfunctional. And they thought about abortion, which was not legal at the time. They thought about adoption. All they knew is they couldn't have another baby. But because they fought about everything and couldn't agree on anything, by default, I got to live. So they had me, but I was born colic. And they tell me I was colic for the first year of my life.
And these are the cried all the time.
8 hours straight is what they would say. And my mother actually tried to kill me twice. She put a pillow over my head.
No.
At one time. The other time she didn't do anything, but she thought about smashing me against the wall, but threw a bottle at the wall. These are stories she told me. So my point is that God not only redeemed my life, but saved my life coming into this family. But then the beauty is you fast forward those 30 some odd years when he brings me into pregnancy center ministry. Matthew West's song says, you'll change the course of generations. I believe that's for my family, for my children and their children. But then
the children, the babies.
That God called me. That's why I do love to share that story maybe another time of how He brought me into ministry.
Yes.
Because He changed my whole life and trajectory to use me for the past almost 20 years to protect life and see that lives are saved.
There's nothing greater.
Yeah. No, there's not. It's a gift. The calling is a gift. And in light of my background, I just think it's powerful.
Wow. So this is so good. I don't want to stop. I mean, we've gone like almost an hour. That's never happened on one of my stories. But we just got caught up in that. That was amazing. Oh, so good. So we're going to do another story. But for now, we're going to stop. Is there anything you would like to say to those listening before we...
I just pray that there's hope.
Yes.
Well, I'm just saying that I pray that you hear hope. And somebody listening, when I would go to Matthew West concerts, I would have people come up to me because they're, like we've been saying over and over, there's such brokenness.
Yes.
And it doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter if it's far worse than what I went through or far better than what I went through. God redeems, God heals, God makes whole.
Yes.
And there's nothing He can't turn around. So never believe the lie that this is who you are and you can't change it. That you are this way because your parents, made you this way, or your circumstances made you this way. God is greater than all of those things. And when you commit your life and your heart to Him, there's nothing He can't do. So that's what I would want to say.
Oh, wow, that was good. Woof. Wow, I'm just...
Thank you.
Processing a lot of what you said.
Thank you for letting me share.
Well, so if you don't know Jesus, there's no time like the present. And it's easy. I try to close every story with this message.
Awesome.
That you just cry out and you say, Lord Jesus, I'm a sinner. I have sinned. I have done, in some cases, bad things or just wrong things that are contrary to your word. Come into my heart, forgive me, and make me new. Make me a new person. And just, I love you, Jesus, and I want you to be Lord over my life. And He's so faithful to do that, to move in. And He will work with you to fix all the brokenness. And it is a process. So just be encouraged that He wants to be Lord over your life. Thank you for tuning in and listening to Rebecca's story, which was amazing. And we're going to try to get another story as well. You guys have a wonderful day, and we'll see you next time. Thank you, Rebecca.